let's start talking about mechs. All right, limited edition, limited, unlimited mechs. Let's walk through what's good, what's not. First up.
Yeah, sorry, I picked out the awesome first. 3 structure, 10 armor, 4 damage. Okay, the damage is only 4. It's got long range, so you can deal 1 to the target. But the great thing here is that it's a straight 6. There's no assembly, no munitions, no tactics, unlike the other variant. Often seen in those Kurita decks where most of the mechs haven't got buyouts or have got L&T buyouts. And for that effect, then it'll fit in most decks in that respect. So if you're looking to build an Inner Sphere deck straight off with only maybe limited and Counter-Strike, then not a bad choice.
Nice.
I agree. I think it can be the top end of your curve for an Inner Sphere deck. And the fact that it doesn't have any buyouts is it can be in those decks that are running politics and logistics and not necessarily assembly. So I think it's a fine card and it's a good card in certain decks.
Let's take a quick tangent and talk about that curve here for kind of the new players, Gustaf. Can you just kind of, quick one-on-one summary, when you're talking about your that power curve on your mech? Or that?
So in BattleTech, it's a lot of board control and presence. So when you think about the costing of your units, you want to have the vast majority of your curve at the 2 and 3 slot. There are very few 1-cost units that are amazing. But the 2 and 3 slot is where your bread and butter is going to be with regard to getting a board presence and establishing board control. The Mongoose, of course, now is Comstar only, but in this limited and unlimited meta with Counter-Strike included, it has the ability to survive a Dasher Prime and live because of the 1 armor. So the 2 and 3 cost cards that you're looking at, we've got the original Night Sky, if we include Mercenaries, which is extremely undercosted and was reprinted in Commander's Edition as a 4-cost. You have your Crusaders. We're going to get into those. But those 2 and 3 slot are fantastic cards. That's where you're going to want to have most of your units. And then you want to have the 4s and maybe a few 5s and maybe a 6, a 7, or even an 8 or a 9, depending if you have, heavy industry or those kind of, not heavy industry, but advanced manufacturing techniques or something to be able to curve those out a little earlier. But the 1, 2, and 3 is where you want to get your mechs out, get them out early, and have that board presence. Because if all you're building is awesomes, you're going to lose the game.
Realistically, you're looking at a development cost. And when are you going to be able to afford a 6-cost mech? You're not going to want one in your opening hand. You're going to want one after about 3 or 4 draws when you've got some resources down. So having one in your opening hand doesn't really give you much. Whereas those 2 and 3 cost mechs that are going to come out next turn, that's what you want. So you might have 6 of those. You might have, say, 3 or 4 awesomes so that you're going to draw one probably in the first 10, 12 cards, having put your resources down, and you're going to be able to build it reasonably quickly.
Yeah. And are you guys, fairly without a session putting down all resources for this first 1-2 turns? Where are you trying to kind of put out a mech in the second turn? What's your general kind of opening strategy there?
Well, it's just like chess. If I'm playing a clan player, the odds of them having 6 Dasher Primes in their deck are very high. I'm not going to, on my first turn, play an assembly and put 1 counter on an awesome, because the Dasher Prime is going to come out and hunt my card under construction, do 3 damage, 2 removes the counter, 1 scraps the card, and that awesome is gone. But if I'm playing another Inner Sphere player, the odds of that happening are much less. So I would be able to put 1 resource down and put a card under construction, get a counter on it if I can't actually build a unit that turn. So depending on my opponent and the type of decks I intend to see, determine whether or not I really want to put a vulnerable card under construction down that could be scrapped that same turn.
Got it.
I think for me, the only other thing to consider is what's in your hand. You can only play what's in your hand. If it's in the deck, you can't do anything with it. But yeah, definitely Mr. Spanky, as he's called, the Dasher Prime, something to be aware of. As Gustaf said, there aren't many Inner Sphere mechs that do that. I think Venom Revised is one that could do that. So I might be tempted to go with the construction, depending on what I've got.
Got it.
Venom Revised is Commander's Edition, Kurita only. So be aware if you're playing your Credo opponent that they might have that.
Yeah.
Got it. All right, next one up. Not a favorite. Black Hawk Prime.
Well, we did this one
It's a
earlier
one.
because it's
trash.
Gustaf.
Yeah.
Gustaf's not favorite card. It's a 3 for me because you can use it.
Mm-hmm.
In an Omnipod cash deck where, okay, that's a gimmick.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Let's just draw the line there. We've picked 70 cards out of the 200 and how many? Let me just check on that. There were 293 cards, so we're not even touching 25% of them here. So, as I said, I'll be a little more generous.
Fair.
There are plenty of other cards out there that I wouldn't even put in the deck.
So quick takeaway: if you're going to put it on the board, don't pay 13 for it. Find another way to get it on the board.
No.
No.
Never pay 13 for it.
Ever. It shouldn't be in your deck unless you're playing Omnipod cash.
All right. Next up, the opposite side, Black Knight. So this one has.
Oh, I like him.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I would rank him higher than a 5 even. I like him a lot. Just because he has the ability to overheat 3 for 3, only dealing 1 damage to himself. He comes out faster than a Banshee, and he can do 6, which is a good number. I like him a lot.
I think for me, he got revised. He's now Comstar only, which limits play. You originally saw him in the wonderful McMallet decks with Inside Job for the reasons that Gustaf's outlined. In that case, yeah, fine. But now with him being Comstar, then no, he's a bit too
I would never
costly.
play him.
No.
If I'm playing Comstar, I'm playing SRMA. So he's out.
Got it.
And I'm playing Hussars. Husser, I don't think is in here, but free deploy with a 0 logistics. Boom, he's better than a Black Knight.
Fair. And what was the ruling? For those cards that got revised, was as soon as the revised came out, like the other ones, the previous versions were not tournament.
Oh no, the ruling was that. Remember we talked about the Evil Owens deck. You can put 24 Owens in a deck.
Oh boy.
So the revised version did not replace. You can put them all in the deck. The lore masters decided that was not the official intent and revised it so that if you want to play revised units, you must play the revised units. So no more 2 cost. So
the lore master was either or the lore master was, if it got revised, then the old card is no longer
viable. The old card is no longer. Don't play the old card.
Got it.
There was
the
one exception. There was one exception, if I remember, which was the Dervish. Because I believe the Commander's Edition Dervish was worse than the original one, and they still got the update wrong.
They did, and it's not a revised unit.
Oh, yes.
That's the other thing. It's not even a revised unit. So you can play the original Dervish, which you should.
All right, let's move on. We got the Blackjack coming up next.
Blackjack, loads of variants in the board game. This is the BJ2. It's a 3-cost 2A. Overheat 1 for 1. Obviously, the overheat will bounce against its armor, so it can freely overheat unless you start focusing on dealing damage to it. And it's got jump. Why did I rate it the way I did? It's a cheap 3-cost mech, and for those reasons, that's not bad going. 3 costs, 3 damage. Used very predominantly in the early swarms where you've got lots and lots of cheap 1, 2, 3, 4-cost mechs coming out, 2 a turn, and from that extent, it was quite usable. You don't see it so much these days, mainly because the slow element has over a period of time moved away. There's a lot more in the way of mediums that like the Wolfhound, for example, and the newer Wolfhound, the 2 in there that just deal about the same amount of damage. They've got a little less structure and they're that much faster. So tend not to see it these days, but that doesn't mean it's bad. If you put a few of these in the deck that you're building, then they'll serve you well.
Gotcha. And what was your rating, Mark? You put it at?
I went for a 6 on that.
I'd put it at a 3 because I still would play a Wolfhound for the medium speed.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't have a jump, I'd still play the Wolfhound. It's 1 less structure, no jump. I would still play the Wolfhound 100% of the time over a Blackjack.
Right.
Agreed, but then what happens if you want more than 6?
I'm going to be playing some Centurions.
Which wonderful
is
segue.
Our next card. All right, the Centurion.
Yeah.
D, not the A. Centurion D.
Yeah, the D is 2A. The A is a straight 2. But you've got less alpha strike, if I remember rightly.
That's right. Only
it's
strike for 1.
Yeah.
So
less damage.
And if you're already having A, you're going to have this anyway. So play the D every time.
Got it.
Yeah. 1/6. It's durable. It's medium. 2 attack isn't too bad. You can get to 4 if you decide you want to alpha strike it. That does make it hunting bait, but it's one of those solid, staple, reliables in the medium field that's generic to the inner sphere. You'll see it in a number of decks over the years. Stood the test of time reasonably well as well.
It still sees play. I'd rank it a 9.
Nice. And that moderate speed that's the key factor, right? With this mech.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Only fast mechs can hunt it.
Right. All right. Next up, it looks pretty. Don't know if you can play it, but the Daishi.
It's a 2 or a 1.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
I mean, what is the maximum cost mech that you would ever pay for to put on the without any kind of gimmick? Highest cost mech.
When you say without any kind of gimmick, I mean, I'll include 6 pillagers in a deck.
Okay.
I'll include 6 Thunderhawks in a deck. There are ways to make that a reliable unit to have in the field. I'll include 6 Daishis in a deck, but that is only through a mission card that card ever actually gets on played, and usually it's scrapped for its value and attack or its cost. But Omnipod Cash and the turn 2 Daishi gimmick deck, maybe. Yeah. It's a 1 or a 2. It's terrible.
Got it.
It's never going to see play. I mean, it's going to cost you 32 if you haven't got the buyouts right. It's gross. It's only going to feature in gimmick decks, of which I think there are three that I can think of anyway that you might consider putting one in. Yeah. And one of those is quite on the cusp. Yes, in the board game, okay, it's going to go out and absolutely obliterate the field. But in the card game, it's the completely opposite effect.
Now, what did they need to do in the card game to make, units like this viable? It's just a cost thing, so that people could play it, that it was even possible that it could be a viable. Because it seems
they tried.
If
they tried. I mean, look at advanced manufacturing techniques.
Mm.
I mean, that's what they tried to do. Those kind of cards that will put more counters on a card that already has counters on it.
Okay.
They've tried, but it just like Mark was talking about opportunity cost, you do not want to see this in your first 6 to 8 to 10 draws. Having this in your opening hand is a completely dead card.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much downside to putting this in your deck.
For me, just a comment there. If you get to 10 draws in a tournament game, then that's quite long. For me, it's the resources. It's those buyouts. You've got a mixture of assembly, logistics, and munitions. There's 3. Now, if you want a reliable deck, you're running 2, 3 at max. And by saying you need 5 assembly, 5 logistics, and 5 munitions buyout on that, you're either going to go with AL and M, which is a really awkward combination, or you've got to pay the extra. Remove them. And the trouble with a lot of the heavy stuff, like the Daishis, the Masakaris, the Kodiaks, whatever else they are, a lot of them have L&M buyouts, which are the least favorable clan buyouts. Clan is AMT or AT all the time. The only time you diverge from that is where you've got the merchant cast with the improved construction facilities, big mech deck kind of approach. And even so, that's not going to make it because of the buyouts. You want mechs with no buyouts, or if you're playing L for merchant cast and ICF and advanced manufacturing techniques, then you might go down the Mad Cat route. There's a couple of options there.
I like the 14 cost Mad Cat that has 0 buyout. I'm speaking your language.
Every time on that one.
Or the giant gladiators. The giant gladiators with no buyout.
There's a couple in there, yeah. But there's no way this is ever going to get on the game unless you start playing gimmicks. There are gimmick decks, but they're not that reliable. You're probably talking about being able to pull the gimmick off 1 game in 3.
So you think this might be playable if you just take out the buyouts? You just go straight.
I think if
I would 17 cost. So if this was a 17 cost mech with no buyouts, you think it would see play?
Yeah. I think it would be considered at least. I think in that Clan Big Mac deck, something like that with 4 armor and 11 structure, it's going to hang around. You're not going to put 6 in your deck. You might have 3 or 4. And if you get one of those on the table, then it's going to wreak all sorts of havoc. But without that, no, it's never going to see play.
All right, going to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. We're going Dasher Prime. All right, small and fast.
Spanky.
It's the best card the clan can have. When that was printed, everybody saw this as a staple card.
Got it.
Yeah.
And still is, or other cards have replaced it since?
Nope.
Still is.
I still think it's a staple card.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. As Gustaf said earlier, assembly and a counter, Mr. Spanky comes out, kills the card under construction. You're on a winner already because you've delayed your opponent's construction and mechs in that respect. He's going to have nothing to block next turn unless he can put a mech straight out, and that's only in the patrol region. You've got a fast dasher, so unless he can put a fast mech out, you're going to be able to hit the stockpile or the next card under construction, or you're going to start hunting his resources. The superior nav combination makes it a resource killer. 3 damage for 2 cost, and it goes straight out. It's great.
It's the gold standard. It's 10 for 10.
Awesome. Now it's little cousin here, the Dash of D. Maybe a little bit better, but that's why it's banned.
The issue here is the overheat being costed wrong. Mm-hmm. It's an overheat 1 and does 3 extra attack, which is very, very generous. So on a mech that's already got 3 attack, you're looking at 6. The elite mech warrior that we talked about earlier makes you the magic 7. You've got a resource hunting combo. So if you've got 2 of these on the board, with 2 elite mech warriors, you can kill 2 resources a turn, which is arguably what the guy can put down if he hasn't got free deploy. Mm-hmm. And you're just going to hose him. He's not going to be able to get anything out. That's why it was banned. When you look at the overheat, I think that actually it should probably be a 0-2-4 overheat 1+1. Okay. But these days, it's expensive when you've got things on the other side like Rocky Gorge, where you've got a 3-cost Innisphere Spectre, where you've got the same 4-cost Wraith, which is AT, and a 1/7/3 that are going to kill it. If you put that on in a tournament deck these days without the Elite Mech Warrior, you'd probably lose. There are cards that have superseded it.
Do you guys want to talk about that Evil Dasher deck? I know, Mark, you had thrown it in. I can overlay it on the screen so people can kind of see, what it was.
Sure.
What is the history of this like?
Well, this is the deck that people started playing once the tournament format had been established. If you remember from the previous podcast, there was a deck with 60 Sentinels in it. There are various other decks of different designs. There's a couple of articles I can dig out where someone is saying you should have 22 Mongoose in your deck because they hadn't got the 6-card rule in. So this came out in between the DCI rules being established and a lot of the first Worlds tournament. And this was being played by a lot of people. And this is the deck that Wizards of the Coast actually published and said, this is why we are banning Dasher D and Elite Mech Warrior.
Appropriately so.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that decision at all.
At that time. I think today, Elite Mech Warrior should still stay banned. I think it's too powerful. I think if you unbanned Dasher D, I don't think anyone would play it.
Nope. I agree. The meta has evolved to such an extent that the Inner Sphere has better, faster mechs and more missions available. Specifically, you've got falsified maps to pull your Rocky Gorge out, and you can double the Rocky Gorge once it's in play. I don't see this deck absent the Elite Mech Warrior being a problem at all.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So people playing with just limited on Counter-Strike cards, keep it banned. But if they've opened it up, they're playing the whole game, then no reason to pull this out of your decks.
let's face it, if it's casual play, you can play
whatever
you
you like.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying
Kitchen
to
table, enjoy it.
Get some experience guidance on what makes a good play experience there. All right, let's move on. Next one, Dragonfly B.
Yeah, I picked this one out of the Dragonflies. They're probably the Ghost Bear equivalent of the Wolf Fenrises. They tend to be one less structure, so they're a 1/5 instead of a 1/6. But for that, you get jump. That opens up a number of combinations, things like risky combat jump or jumping to gain initiative and playing another mission. It does make you a little susceptible to leap before you look. Over time, they've tended to get used with elementals or to complete resource hunting decks where the base 3 plus the elemental of 3 in AP makes a 4, or used with dasher decks. And you know, they're quite reasonable and durable. If you're going to play Ghost Bear deck, you're going to look to this as a solid. The only one that isn't a single A buyout or an AT buyout is the Prime in that 3 cost slot. So the A is 5, D is 6, and the B and C are 4 each. So they're quite well costed in that respect.
We can give them negative point for being kind of the least creative variety of art, you know, on those 4 Dragonflies. Take the same picture and rotate the angle.
It's like the guy rubber stamped 4 of them. And
it was like, all right, I've got one day to do this, and I can only do 1 in a day.
These played prominently in 2001, which was the last, I guess you'd say, unofficial Worlds tournament. They're a very good deck. Jason used it in the Ghost Bear deck very effectively with strip mining and the elementals. I don't know if you can put that deck up there, but it is absolutely a staple in that Ghost Bear deck, and it's tier 1.
Yeah, awesome. All right, next up, the Enforcer.
Just for a bit of comparison here, and when you look at this, when compared to your Centurion, it's a 1/6/2 again. It's Alpha 1 instead of Alpha 2. It's slow.
Yep. I would never play this.
Yeah.
Never play this.
All right.
It's a 1.
If you've got, well, I'm going to disagree with you there. If you've got limited and just Counter-Strike and you're going to try and put together a Davian Swarm, lots of 2-cost mechs, you might put that in. The Blackjack that I mentioned earlier, Centurion, some of the Hatchetmen, whatever else. You can easily make a 30 mech deck of cheap 2-cost mechs, of which that would be one that you'd put in and just keep chucking them out 2 a turn.
2 at a time. I agree. In that format where you're only dealing with limited and Counter-Strike, this has a 5 or a 6 rating. Today, it's a 1 or 2. You will never play this deck in a constructed.
You won't see it. No, totally agree on that one.
Got it. All right. On the opposite end of valuable, we got the Fenris Prime.
I like this, and I know that Michael didn't, but you know, everyone's to their own opinion.
Peter Sundholm's opinion matters, in my opinion.
Michael loved it. Michael loved it. He just thought that the what was the other mech? Hankyu was better, but the Hankyu also has much higher buyouts if you're not hitting those resources early.
Hankyu's got jump. Again.
Which is nice. I agree. But if you're playing Hankyu, you're playing Crusade. We're talking about, again,
limited Counter-Strike. Yeah.
Limited and Counter-Strike. And this is again the benchmark by which all 3 cost units are priced against. This is the gold standard for Clan. It's fast. It does 3 damage. It's fantastic.
The buyouts are important. 1A, 1M, 1T. It's not the end of the world paying 4 for it. When you compare it to the Dragonfly, which has got higher buyouts, 3s and 2s, and is also 3 cost, it wins hands down. You would take this arguably over the Fenris A, which is a 2 damage anti-missile mech. What other fast 3 cost mechs are there? Until Crusade, or even later in the game. So, yeah, it's good. It's durable. It's a warhorse for me. It keeps going and going and going. The only thing I'd note with this is if you are looking at the conversion stats from the board game to the card game, Fenris Prime has got a PPC. No fast mech that's been converted has any long range options.
Mm.
So even though it's got a PPC, like say the Awesome, where there are 3, you get long range 2. No fast mech has got a long range option.
Interesting.
Just one of the things one of the things that they did when they designed the game.
And you had touched on the Fenris A when we were talking about Prime, but we have the Fenris C kind of mentioned on the next slide. So
yeah, again, I think this is a little underrated. And again, if you're playing with just the base game and Counter-Strike, I think this is actually a little better than people might give it credit for. And I think you can play some strategic mind games with people with a Fenris C. If you've got a stalemate, then it's a cheap mech. It does 1 damage and it's got 1 missile. Okay, that's not great. And if you go into a battle, then it's the unreliable missile. But if you've got that stalemate and you just send your Fenris C across, your opponent's got to think, do I block that? It's going to do 1 damage. Now, if it does 1 damage, I'm maybe not too worried about it. But it's got that missile roll. You know, there's a 50% chance that you can roll something that's going to score. Now, if it hits a 1, then I'm taking 2. Okay, maybe I'll do that. I can live with that. If you roll a 2, then that's 3 damage. And then if you roll a 3 and you take 4 damage, you're thinking, well, that's not so great. So does the guy block it and tie up one of his mechs, or does he let it through? You know, I think it's a little better than people are giving it credit for. Maybe I'm a bit more of a fan of it than some other people. But hey, that's my opinion.
In the Wolf deck of today, when we're dealing with Mech Warrior and the Phantom's ability to dash, I would rather be paying for a unit that had the dash ability. When it's fully constructed, you can reveal it and put it into play. If you're just dealing with the initial limited, unlimited, and Crusade, it has a much greater value. I agree.
All right, back into Inner Sphere. We got the Dragon up next.
Yeah. Kurita Workhorse. It's medium, straight 4, no buyouts. 263. 3 damage is quite nice. Overheat 2+1, so the overheat goes against the armor. So you can easily get an extra damage out of that for 3. A pair of these coming across at you is you know, you're going to take a fair bit of damage, and arguably they're Kurita, so you've got no buyouts in there. It's possibly one of the best. They're going to be heavies, aren't they? In that 4 cost slot.
And
if you're a Kurita unit and you're, I think it's a backbone of a Kurita deck if you're playing Kurita in this time frame. Today, I think there are better 4 cost units that you would choose, but in that time frame, it would be a backbone. It would be a 6 of, I think.
Got it. And quick correction.
No buyouts is nice.
Yeah, quick correction to myself. If people are just listening to audio, I said Dragon, but it's this. We're talking about the Grand Dragon.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my mistake because I can't type.
That's all right. All right. So solid workhorse mech there for Kurita. Hatamoto-Chi, another Kurita mech coming up next.
Arguably
kind of same principles, right? Same.
Sorry?
Same principles there.
Yeah, except it's slow. It can be hunted. So it's not as good in my opinion, but it can take a lot more punishment because it's slow.
3/8 makes it pretty durable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that sacrifice for the dragon I mentioned earlier?
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we got the Hatchetman, specifically the 5S.
This is a fantastic Hatchetman. I really like it.
Awesome. Cool art too. I like it.
Both Hatchetman, the art's really good. This got revised, which means you could actually end up with an 18 Hatchetman deck if you really wanted them. It turned into a 3 cost, but the damage was up to a 3.
Okay.
And that variant is actually really, really good with 3 and the overheat 1+1. A lot of people forget about the damage of the hatch as well. Probably more useful against inner sphere opponents, but it is a nice little extra in there.
It's a solid card, and in this limited and Crusade environment, it was absolutely a backbone of the Swarm deck for the inner sphere. Today, if you're playing there are better cards to play at the 2 slot.
And Gustaf, you keep saying limited in Crusade, just so people listen. You're meaning limited in Counter-Strike.
I do mean limited in Counter-Strike. The first 2 sets.
All right. Yeah, I know. Understand what you mean, not what you say, right? Yeah.
Right. If we're playing Crusade, I'm not putting Hatchetman in my deck as my 2 slot
there's
card.
Better stuff. All right. Next up, Gladiator Prime. Back to some heavy clan mechs.
Yeah. Solid, durable at 310. Jump's quite nice. Long range 2 is nice. The 9 with no buyouts is even better. I just so wish this did 7. I so wish this did 7. It would be a much better mech. It would go into most big mech decks for the clan with that. And with 9 with no buyout, it would be flying out at high speed. Just infuriates me. And it's Omni as well. You can put it in any clan deck.
Right. And you can use Omni Podcash.
Yeah.
There are gladiators that cost a lot more than 9, Mark.
Yeah.
So I think that you compare this with regard to the damage that it does as a clan unit. Usually clans had the better engines, the better weapons. It's extremely low value on attack, because if I'm paying 9, I'd rather play an inner sphere Cerebrus and have 8 damage. Lose my jump capacity, lose one of my structure. But when you have the ability for that basically 9 plus L inner sphere logistics, you're going to be playing that for your advanced manufacturing techniques anyway, to get that out on an earlier turn. And you compare the 2 values between those cards, the inner sphere card is better than this Gladiator Prime. Of course, we're dealing with Mech Warrior.
Yeah, later sets.
So we're into the 4th set now.
All right. Next up, we got going back to Fast Mechs, Koshi D Prime. 2 mechs, Koshi D or Koshi Prime.
Well, they've got exactly the same stats and everything else. They're, to all intents and purposes, the same. What's interesting with the D is it doesn't have any affiliation, whereas all the other ones do. The Primes across any clan set have no affiliation apart from just clan. So you can put any Prime mech in Smoke Jag, Steel Viper, whatever else it is. This one probably should have, but it didn't. I prefer the artwork on this one than the other one, to be honest. It's nice with elementals. If you go down that arms reduction deck that we were talking about earlier, 10 elementals, 6 Koshi D, 6 Koshi Prime, 2 cost. That's all you can spend under arms reduction. You've got a nice little mech. Nice little deck as well. It's got jump as well, which with the right missions can be quite effective.
Risky combat jump is fantastic with elementals and dragonflies. It's even better with Koshis and elementals. Yeah.
I rate it a 6. Maybe I've got a soft spot for it. Will you see it played? No. Can you make some nice, fun 5 out of 10 decks to go and play at the weekend against your friend with it? Yes.
Awesome.
It's not competitive, but it's a fun unit, and it kills a dasher. It's a 1 cost that you could have on the board on turn. If you're turn 2 player, your turn 1, you can get that out and it'll stop the dasher.
Got it. All right, next up we're moving to Loki. Let's just make an honorable mention for the combination of really fun, cool artwork on every Loki with an absolutely horrible mech to play on the game. Do we agree?
It's a terrible card.
You just think that they could take all those ALMP and T bits out and actually have a bigger picture, which looked even better. It would be much nicer, wouldn't it?
Yep, have a full art version.
Which you still wouldn't play because the mech kills itself.
So bad, yeah.
It's the classic example of we've got a chassis, let's stick everything we can on it, and the fluffy dice. It just kills itself, even if you can get it on the table with 4 buyouts, which most normal people are never going to get to. The only potential here is that with that +6 attack and 6 of damage, it's got heroic sacrifice written all over it.
Or maybe some of those overheat prevention cards, the rapid cooldown or something. I mean, does it have any value?
I don't know. You even play that. It's
it's
going to scrap itself. I mean, maybe, but I mean, your opponent's going to be able to deal 7 damage and address this unit. With the ECM, it only takes 7 to make it go away. It's only a medium speed, so you're going to get a hunt down situation.
So if we're kind of theoretical, we're playing kind of lore and fixing cards here, do we think that obviously no mech is pretty much going to destroy itself, whether you're Blackhawk Prime or Loki Prime? If they had made that a Alpha Strike for that attack bonus for the overheat, you think that's better? Think it's a better way approach to this card?
Well, if you make it an Alpha Strike, look at the card that pull up the card that Mark talked about previously. We're talking about the Hunchback 2C, which has those giant AC cannons mounted on its shoulder, where it has basically the same card. You're looking at a 1/4/5 for half the price. It costs 6, and you can do 10, and it doesn't kill itself. It just takes itself out of the game for an extra turn because it's depleted. You look at this. It's miserable. It costs twice as much, has terrible buyouts, and it blows itself up.
And do you guys think, just from kind of making sense and lore-wise, that the terms Alpha Strike and Overheat should be flipped in this game? That Alpha Strike should be something that that does damage to you, and Overheat is just something that should deplete you for a turn?
I don't know.
Because overheating yourself in the game isn't going to damage your mech, but definitely like going all out Alpha Strike, that seems like something that would damage it. It just seems like backwards to me. It seems like first you should deplete yourself, and then you should overheat your depleted self and possibly damage yourself. I don't know. I digress.
I think there is an important distinction between the two with the card game. And obviously, Alpha Striking depletes your mech. Now, unless you've got a very, very, very good reason to do that, I probably wouldn't do it. Because with your mech depleted, it's out of the game effectively, and it can be hunted by anything. So if you Alpha Strike and it's sat there turned face down, I'm thinking I can get a free hit on that. I can kill it and not take any damage at all. It's not going to hurt me. I could get it off the table. And that's a bonus. Whereas Overheat, the damage can bounce off armor, which doesn't make any sense in the board game, but it's a card game. And from that point of view, then if I overheat, then there's much, much less risk. If the card's going to die, it's probably going to die anyway. So overheat is generally preferred to Alpha Strike when it comes to the card game.
Unless it's a vehicle. Pull up the Saladin. A Saladin comes out for nothing, free, and it has the ability to do 3 with an Alpha Strike. I'll take 3 off your stockpile, thank you very much, rather than 1 over 3 turns. Because if you think about the mechanism for the depletion, the readying, and the ability to go again, hitting that 3 right off the gate, having those Saladins in your opening hand, number 1, dash of prevention, number 2, stockpile strikes.
Definitely.
Right. Always keep it for the dash of prevention, though.
There you go.
If your opponent is clan.
Yeah.
All right, back on target here. This was a favorite of Michael when we talked in the other video. O War Prime.
Yeah, it's Prime. Any of the clan can use it. It's a 5/2A. It's 3/7 at medium, which is solid as you get at medium, and it does 4 damage. It's a bit pricey for what it is. I wish there was an overheat 1+1 or something like that on it, but or an alpha. But it's solid. It's not going to make many clan decks these days. Probably didn't make too many at the start. But if you're having a bit of fun and playing at the weekend, or if you're going to draft, then it's decent. Stick it in a deck and go and play with it. You're not putting a doozy in your hand.
It's a sticky unit. The fact that it has 3 armor is huge at a medium speed. It'll stay around for a while. Remember, if you have assembly in play, you're probably going to have assembly in your deck. You're going to be able to repair 1 per turn. That's a lot of damage that the War Prime can absorb. It's going to stick around for a while. I'm a fan of it. When you compare it to Intersphere units at the 4 and 5 slot, at medium speed, 3 armor is fantastic.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that always thinks medium when I see that M, that both of you guys also say medium, and nobody says modern. All right, let's next one up, Mad Cat A. This is one that you had talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So we got the Mad Cat A 14299. Take us through, Mark.
Well, 299, durable. Okay, 2 armor, not as great as the Man of War, but 9 structures, really good. Overheat 1+1. Yeah, it'll do 10. If you can get it on the table, it will do 10, and that's a long way towards our Magic 40. One of those cards that didn't get converted right. If you look at that, there's 2 PPCs on there. Maybe it should have had long range too as a bit of an option. But with no buyouts, it's clan big mech deck fodder. If you can build a deck around it to start pumping a couple of these out, then you're going to have your opponent in a lot of hurt, especially as it's a medium. Yeah, it's playable.
When we're thinking, once you hit Merchant Cast and ICF, absolutely. When we're thinking only the first 2 sets, it's a 1 or a 2. Not going to see play. But when you think about Big Mech and the Trader Wolf deck, absolutely, it's a solid play. Medium speed, it's good. You hunt this, your units die.
All right. Here's one for the masses that you can't unsee. Let's look at that picture. Those legs will never, ever look like that unless something bad is happening. The Mad Cat's legs don't go too straight like that. You guys see what I'm talking about?
Artistic license, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something, but it's
just so they could get the other one in the background.
It's not how the mech works. All right, Mad Cat B, another version.
Yeah,
the cheap one.
In comparison, it's 14 down to 9, and you're only losing 2 damage. The reason I picked this one out is the 7 damage at medium. It's possibly the cheapest medium cost that will do 7 damage, and at that point you can potentially kill resources with it. It's A&M, so you're going to need an AMT deck. You're not going to put 6 of them in, but you might put 2 or 3 in the right deck. You probably wouldn't play it in a tournament, but you know, if you're going to play it at the weekend against your friends, then put it in and have some fun.
Now, when I look at this mech, it makes me question the costing formula. Because how do you lose 5 cost with only losing 2 power and an overheat? That just seems it seems like no brainer that this mech be played over the AA at a time, or even there's something wrong with the costing formula between how they got from one to the other here.
I think the A is wrongly costed. The other thing to note is obviously the buyouts of A&M.
Yeah.
Makes it a little harder to get on the table because of those. Maybe you could say, well, it's 11 against a 14. Yeah. But I really think that A is costed wrong, and should have had a few extra options in there, probably long range too.
All right, and then now we're at the All-Star, the Inner Sphere All-Star. We got the Mongoose. Inner Sphere generic, eventually Comstar, but for now we're Inner Sphere generic.
It's the backbone of every single Inner Sphere deck that played in 95 and 96. It's the gold standard for Inner Sphere, and it has never been replicated.
Yeah. And it's a cool looking mech too. I like the Mongoose, like in the TRO. The art's all right here, but I always thought it was a cool one from tabletop days.
It's the only 1 or 2 cost Inner Sphere mech that can kill the Dasher Prime and survive. Everything else dies horribly.
Yep.
It still is the only one that does that.
Yep. It's fantastic. I mean, if you're playing up to Arsenal, you have the possibility with a Pinto at 2 cost to survive with 4 structure, but then you're rolling and 1/3 of the time you're going to blow up anyway. So no, the Mongoose has never been eclipsed as far as value. Too bad it's Comstar only, or you have to be playing that alliance that allows you to put all factions in as Inner Sphere.
Right. Yeah. And 1/3 is generally better than 0/4.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, next one up, Ryoken D. We talked about this earlier when we were talking about missiles.
Missile boat. The nice thing here is the 1 damage for the retrofit missile rack to give you 2 more missiles, 5 missiles, and Narc, which has an effect on those die rolls. If you get this right, you can deal 15 damage, which is quite considerable. The trouble is protecting it and getting it to that stage. And at 6 cost, it's quite heavy. Although it's an A buyout, 3A on it, you're going to need munitions in the deck anyway, and you're probably going to want tactics to play the odd mission card to keep it alive. So you're probably looking AMT. So
I agree. These are the kind of units that you want to have the heavy fog, that you want to have the feint for, because you want this unit to be able to have at least 2 swings at a stockpile with the retrofitted missile rack and the targeting ace.
Awesome.
And the card that arguably everyone hated in the Smoke Jaguar pre-constructed Commander's Edition box.
Awesome. All right, next up, Uller. The Uller Prime and the A.
And the A, arguably the entire Uller series. Reasons for that is very low cost, very high damage. You're paying 2 for a 4 damage mech. If you can get a number of these on the table, then 2 pairs of these can kill 2 resources a turn. There were various decks early on. In fact, I think one of the world champions in '97 actually had a reasonably strong Uller contingent in it. Played lots of pushing the envelopes as well to get that 7 damage and still survive.
Absolutely.
It's cheap and cheerful. When you compare it to something like your Centurion at 162, then you're sacrificing an awful lot of durability for a lot of damage. You're never
Which the clan's willing to do because tempo is in the clan's favor.
Yeah,
the clan's all about tempo.
You're never going to play a tournament deck with this in, but draft and casual play, it's reasonably solid.
Awesome.
I still think there's an Uller deck out there, a Jade Falcon specifically deck out there that is at least tier 2, possibly tier 0.5, just because with the addition of Crusade, you have Steel Talons, which in my opinion is one of the top 3 missions in the game. So the Uller deck is viable. There are Uller cards that cost 3 and can do 5. Just the costing of the Ullers is pretty fantastic for Jade Falcon.
Awesome. All right, back into Inner Sphere here. We got the Victor. What version is this? The 9B, looks like.
Yep, it's got the better Alpha Strike.
Yeah. I picked this one out because there's a Zeus variant that we'll look at in a second or two.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of highlight the differences between the 2 mechs that both sat there at 80 tons. They're both 273s. Where one's got an overheat, one's got an Alpha Strike option. The Victor is generic, and the Zeus is Steiner-Davian, I'm pretty sure it's Steiner-Davian. If you get a sharpshooter from one of the later sets in Solaris contracts, you can make this do 7 for a 4 cost and a pilot. That's pretty powerful. That hurts. That will kill a lot of things, whether it's a resource or a mech, or even go through to the stockpile. It's not quite going to be tournament standard deck, but you can have a lot of fun with those particular options and just enjoy the game. It's got jump as well, which makes Risky Combat Jump a nice card for it, which came out in Crusade. Not Crusade. You got me saying it now. Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike. I agree. I like the Victor. It's better when you have access to sharpshooters and a deck built around alpha striking. So we put 3 or 4 sharpshooters in a deck with Solaris contacts. You've got the alpha striking units for the Inner Sphere that you can get. When you can get a magic number 7 on 1 unit with a pilot, that's fantastic. Too bad that unit is slow. It's subject to hunt down by clan units. But with 7, it kills a Fenris right out of the gate. A 1/6 Fenris, all the Fenrises are 1/6. It'll kill it. It'll kill a Dragonfly. So the opponent needs to think about what it's attacking with. If it's attacking with a little Spanky and an Omni Mech Blitzkrieg Elemental Point, they both go. So it's definitely a target. But I like that unit. I like it even better once we get to Mech Warrior and we can have access to Solaris contacts and the alpha striking pilots.
Yeah. And let's skip right over to the Zeus, for that kind of direct comparison, and then we'll come back to the what we skipped.
Zeus for me gets a slightly higher rating because it's
overheat. This is the 9S. 9S.
This is the 9S, is the Davian Steiner variant. Yeah, it's the one that does overheat 2 for 2 attack. The other one I think is 1 for 1. So obviously you're getting more bang for your buck on this one. It's the same stats. It's just overheat instead of alpha strike. And for me, the overheat is more flexible, and the penalties not as severe for alpha strike. Again, as Gus says, if you can get to the pilot that supports this, that's the red line pilot, where you get +2 and the overheat doesn't do any damage, then this is great. The other thing to note is the mission we talked about earlier, the rapid cooldown, actually works with this, whereas I don't think there are many missions that work specifically with alpha strike in the earlier sets. So
front-loaded supply lines comes later.
Yeah. So you've got a little more in the way of synergy with some of the other cards you might put in your deck. If you think about some of the cards we've talked about, there was the Hatchetman, there's the Wolfhound, which we've skipped to go here. A number of them overheat. Your only disadvantage may be your Centurion C9-D. But if you're going to go that way and pick a number of overheat units, then all of a sudden that rapid cooldown mission could be quite useful, and you've got that deck synergy going on where everything starts to work and complement each other, and you know then that you've actually got a good, decent working deck.
Yeah, these, even before I understood the game, I was putting as many of these in my deck as I had. I think the value of it was obvious even to me as a completely novice player.
Yeah, they're great. They're a backbone of a Davian Steiner unit. I think they're fantastic units, the Zeus. Yeah. And particularly this one, because why would you ever want an overheat 1 for 1 when you can double that up and have it overheat 2 for 2 and still have all that damage absorbed in armor? Totally.
And then kind of along the same bent, the other one that was kind of obvious even to the novice player was the Wolfhound. So Wolfhounds and Zeus I maxed out in kind of my first bit of cards. But plus, I like the Wolfhound. The Wolfhound's an awesome looking mech. But this is the last one on our list, so let's finish strong here.
It's a strong unit.
Yeah.
Only the Night Sky is better, and it was revised because it was undercosted.
Yeah, because it was a mistake, right?
It was a mistake.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm not so sure they didn't make a mistake when they did the revision, but that's opinion. This little Wolfhound here, the WLF-2, it's a straight 3 cost, no assets, so any deck that's Davian or Steiner, it's a 1/5/3, so 3 damage out of your medium, and for 3 cost, not bad value at all. The overheat 2+1 gives you the option of getting to 4. The only downside for me is it's a 1/5, and you look at your Centurion at 1/6 and you just think, oh, I wish it'd got another structure on it.
It would be fantastic to have another structure. I agree.
Yeah, probably.
But it's still that's the only thing that brings it down in my book, is that it's not a 1/6 and requires just 7 to scrap, because you can get 6 damage on that very easily with fast mechs that do 3 each. That can kill it, and both fast mechs will survive even when it overheats doing the 4. So it would be nice if it was 7 to destroy it, but it's still a fantastic unit. No buyouts. It still sees play today.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's it. So any kind of notable mentions that weren't on there? Mark, I know you had said you had edited a little bit. Was there anything that I missed in my sheet?
There's always cards. There's always cards and whatever else. What I'd say is that if you're watching this and there's a card you want reviewed, you let us know and we'll tell you what we think of it. How's that sound?
Put it in the comments. I love it.
And if we do, I don't know, if we do Counter-Strike or we carry on, we'll put those in at the start as kind of like so-and-so's questions or whatever else. And we'll tell you what we think of it.
Perfect.
And I'm sorry, but I'll be brutally honest. If it's great, I'll tell you it's great. If it's mediocre, it's mediocre. And if it's pants, it's pants.
Definitely. Yeah, and for those listening, and I think what I'll do is I'll split this up into 3 chapters, just because the limited set is so long. So we'll do like an hour each one. People can click through, but yeah, we'll definitely, our plan, if people are enjoying this, benefit from it, our plan is to, dive through each set eventually, as our schedules allow, but and we'll kind of do this kind of similar review.